Da, 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 and it's alright. Da, da, da. Hello, welcome to this Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to Stream Street Day 143. That's correct. Welcome to the show. Today it's just me, and it is going to be a small episode. So it's going to be, normally we run about an hour, but I'm only going to do 30 minutes today. That's because of a phenomenal workload occurring, but it still counts. Always still counts. Welcome everyone to the show. Hello everyone. Mainly to the Twitch chat today. What up? Tomagens, Draconda, MJ Pegasus, Gursey, Yes Meatballs, sorry again. Grinaldi, Owen Jackson. Just talk faster. That works. That does work. Gitley, Ziggy, I see you all as well. I mean, I could stay longer. Depends what comes up, but probably not. Thank you to everyone that's watching on Patreon podcast, guys. Thank you for listening and also rating us 5 stars on whichever app you're listening on. I appreciate that tons. And of course, thank you to everyone. Yeah, that's all the guys. That's all of you. You're all great. And if you're new, big love. Welcome to the team. Um, right. So let me tell you where I'm at. Because this is my fifth 16-hour day in a row. So that's my update. So I haven't got a guest today because, well, it's been busy. Anyway, let me tell you where I'm at. We've been building the venue for the Super Series, so the T Sports Arena. That's been well underhand, and it's been very hard work. I'm knackered. Nathan doesn't seem stressed at all. He's just like, this is his regular level of work. And there are so many exciting projects happening at the minute that's all I've been doing. I haven't had time to like read a new codex and come up with a genius new sort of list, or I haven't had time to like become weirdly fascinated with Sisters of Battle for some reason. So I don't really have anything like that to talk about at the moment. I've looked at some army lists and some tournament results, but I have been hanging out with the in real life stream from the work site. Yeah, we could do that. So not next week because Nathan's away next week, but the week after we could potentially do a work site stream as we start to move some equipment in the future. So I'll update on the site as it goes, but I'll update you on some of the other projects that's been going on because some of those have been because of you guys in the Twitch chat, which has been phenomenal. So we talked earlier in the week about like with Owen and Charlie, so Colonel Cabbage in the chat. We had a conversation about stats and about stats that we'd like to see generated. Well, you guys, some of you guys in the chat, we've all like jumped into a Discord. So big shout out to Ziggy, Mathmallow, sorry again, all you guys. We've really started to like blow this out of the water, I think. Now, who knows what that's going to turn into? I think there's a couple of problems. Obviously, it's always an analog game, so data collection is going to be a huge issue for us because you have to kind of like ask each player what's going on at certain points, and you don't want to disturb their games, especially as they'll be competing for the prizes. Oh yeah, you guys don't know what the prizes are yet. More on that later. But it looks like that project as well is a very exciting future. There's also loads of ways to potentially apply this project. You could apply it to bat reps that you see in other places. You know, all sorts of different sort of like systems for tracking, not just tracking data, but tracking data for analysis. As a commentator, I'm really excited, and that's what's taken up. But it's an incomplete project. So for like an hour-long podcast, which I do every day, I don't really have tons to deliver to you guys, but like we looked at, there was some really clever stuff done already by Hey Jay Stitz. Hello. There was some really clever stuff done by Mathmallow where he not only grouped things like, looking at things such as the attempts to cast something. So let's say Army X attempts to cast 5 spells per turn, but has a success rate of only 40%, whereas Army Y attempts to cast 5 spells as well, but they have a success rate of like 80%. There's such an amazing kind of like side-by-side comparison, but also kind of like a general... Anyway, my mind's exploded this week, and it's basically consumed my thought processes behind the scenes while I've been doing this other stuff. Now, this doesn't really relate to the future. Yeah, it's nothing really relatable to you, but I'm hoping you guys get the energy that I have for it. It's hello Trog, what up? Thanks, style. So yeah, that's what we've been working on that the past few days, as well as the terrain projects for the Super Series as well. Is it Big Dick Energy? It's Big Dick Energy, Gitley. Like, cause, can you imagine that, like the post-match analysis stuff? So LLV, and let's shout out LLV one more time, or Peter the Falcone. That stat information is so valuable to us. I mean, we already talk about that already when we talk about units. This unit does one shot, but it hits on a 2, wounds on a 3, or the best one is 3s and 3s, right? It's got 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, and it's like, well, you'll drop 1 at least. Maybe you'll drop 2. It's got no Ren, so it gets a 4-up save. You know, half the time it's not going to go through. We already have those conversations just when we're looking at unit profiles. We start to look at whole armies. The thing that I'm most, big stats energy, BSE. That's definitely what we've got. The thing I'm excited about is army tempo. So, armies that, like, start slow, build big, or armies that start. Dreadwoods, thanks for subscribing, by the way. Oh, no, Deadwoods, thanks for subscribing. Armies that like start slow, build fast, or armies that start fast, build and end like quite weakly. I think there's some really interesting stuff where you do some graphs and charts. And as a commentator for the future, I'm kind of excited by COVID. Gave us this opportunity to kind of slow down a little bit and then just go, can we fit that in as a project? Probably not. But should we? Yes! I think, fuck yes, we should. Because it's going to be exciting. So, more on that later as we develop that. But big love to the team that are helping me work on it. Not BSE, that's mad cow disease. Okay, not BSE then. Although Big Stacks Energy is good. All my armies start slow and frizzle out. Wait for the stats to prove stuff is broken. Yeah, Scott B, but also the interesting part about that is you might understand other stuff. I'm also, obviously, initially when we do the Age of Sigmar Super Series, the first one, that is Age of Sigmar. But when we turn this system also into 40k, like I'm so excited to see like when strats are used and at what stage they're used. Like their usage when. It's going to be fascinating. Like is that repeated all the time? Is that repeated against different armies? Oh my god, DeBolt, love you tons. Thanks for subbing and being here. Anyway, so that's a project that I'm very excited about, which is in its infancy, but it's already got some like real good legs. We do have a huge problem in actually collecting the data. But one of the really cool bits, so if you actually go onto the T Sports Network website, so tsportsnetwork.com, you'll see our Patreon for the T Sports Network, specifically for the Super Series. One of the things that we are working on is, well, we will be working on, so when we, so it's teams of 4 in the Super Series, teams of 4, so when they play against each other, each one of the games will be recorded individually. So if you go and watch each one, so like when you're watching the coverage, which will be like the commentary booth, interviews, like stat stuff, like, you know, it'll be your classic kind of like sports, like cup kind of level of like, it'll have a better commentator than me, I imagine, who's able to explain things well. It'll have all of those elements, right? So it'll be like the supercut. It'll be the mash of all the stuff. Whereas one of the things that we'll also be able to do, thanks to the technology we've been working on over the past year, big shout out to everyone on Patreon. Again, Patreon, Twitch guys, we could never have got this far without you. You guys are pushing the entire envelope of what this looks like. As a community, which is just phenomenal. So thank you, each one of you, whatever you contribute, thank you. We'll be able to record each one of those games individually. So at the end of a day, because they play 3 rounds, so 2 teams of 4 will play each other 3 times. So what you'll end up with is 8 games. No, not 8 games. You'll end up with 12 games, but they'll be recorded in full with player audio. So they'll be going on the Patreon for the T Sports Network. So you'll be able to watch all of those back live in full, which is really useful. But also means we might be able to integrate that into the stats and use those for like post-match analysis, which is some side stuff later. Anyway, very interesting stuff. Did you get my message on Discord about how and when to collect the data? I did, maybe, but I'll check after. I'd check after. I think there's a during and after conversation. It's exciting. I'm excited. I'm like sat here like I got the heart racing sort of situation. I'm excited to talk to you guys about it as well. I'm nervous as well because whenever we tend to start develop this stuff, people always try and like nick our ideas or whatever. But that's the problem with being the development team or being at the front. There's always people trying to chase behind us, I think. Um, how are you building the terrain for the Super Series? Okay, so Draconda, I can announce some of that stuff as well. Let's talk about terrain, because another project we've got going on at the minute is terrain. That's actually the legend that is the Mr. Owen Jackson is actually heading up the terrain team, so big love to him. One of the things about the terrain that we wanted to do, and no one knows this yet, so this is going to be a bit of an Honest Wargamer exclusive. One of the things that we wanted to do was make it so that the terrain wasn't terrain, it was a setting. So there'll be 4 settings. So it won't be table 1. It'll be the under empire of something, effectively. So the idea is that there will be a story for each of the 4 tables. Because as important as things like the stats are for like competitive gaming and knowledge and stuff I'm very excited about, the narrative is just as important. I wanted the battles to happen in a place as opposed to some generic other place. So they'll be based in a realm narratively. That won't affect their in-game rules because I'm not about that personally. And so they'll have there'll be realms, but they won't be like realm rules. They'll be part of like a living place inside the realms that we've created as a community and as a story. And as seasons change, the plans are, so there'll be 4 of them, and they'll be distinct. They even have their own color profiles and other stuff. It's meant to look really, really swish. And I've got people far more talented than me working on that project. So they're working on like the color profile for each one being different, so you know when you jump to those, they'll be different. There's also different terrain density as well. So in the pack, this is really good. There'll be Mortal Realm, yes. So yeah, there's an Ashqui one which is obviously only volcanoes, because the only thing that exists in Ashqui, as I've always said, is only volcanoes. Volcanoes only, nothing else. What's this? Narrative in my competitive tournament? Yes. Yeah, I think narrative all the volcanoes all the time. It's actually just 4 tables of volcanoes. Everything I just said is bullshit. It's just 4 tables of just volcanoes. That's it. That's the story. Anyway, so, but what we're hoping to get, yeah, I know, sorry, I've told everyone. What we're hoping to get is 4 stories, which will have a place on the website. They'll have a video. You guys will know the story. And then as we play through the first Super Series, what will be really exciting as we play through the first one is you guys will be able to kind of like, you as the viewers, because that's what it's really designed for. You guys and us as the commentators will have this kind of ongoing story. I'll be like, let's just pick the ruins of, I'm making up a name, Golgiliath. I think that's actually a place in Lord of the Rings. But let's say there's the ruins of Golgiliath, whatever. Like, because each little bit will be named on the terrain. So it won't just be insert volume, insert name of area. It'll be like the little hut. I, by the way, lobbied really hard for there being like a little village, because I wanted to like be like, oh look, you know, at like Stormbright Lightspear's house. Remember when the Uruk, the Uruk got his head chopped off to secure that victory point? Hilarious. But I want there to be those key points, because as much as me and the narrative guys sometimes seem to butt heads, that's not the case at all. I've talked loads about how I think one of the awesome things about Age of Sigmar and 40k is, although less so in 40k, no, it's getting better in 40k. Normally, the power of an army is built behind the narrative. So if I run a Sylvaneth army, that's a terrible example. If I run a Seraphon army, they get more powerful if I make them Seraphon only, and if I make them have a certain allegiance, they get more powerful. So the power is built into the narrative. So what I would like is the competition to be built into the narrative of the setting. And a big shout out to Owen and James and Tom and Nick, who are all working on that project as well. So that's really, really exciting. And what's exciting about that is the ability to move on. So when we do the next Super Series or the next season, we might be able to do things like voting. We might be able to do things like player-run competition for the story. We might be able to design our own terrain sets, and then we might be able to sell them. So we could create like a narrative of a place, build those terrain sets, and then sell them. And then you guys could be like, oh, awesome. I loved whatever the fuck that place is. very hyped to play in it, and he could buy it. And it's not like meant to be a money making scheme. It's meant to be a relationship between us and you sort of a situation. You know, like I quite oftentimes seen terrain or scenery available to buy. Like as you guys may or may not know, I'm a huge fan of Tabletop Worlds. They're kind of, I think they're maybe a Czech company who make amazing buildings. Because I think every battle, by the way, I think Ashqui is made of volcanoes, and every battle should happen in like a village, like I'm playing Baldur's Gate or Skyrim, and it's just little huts with thatch roofs. There's a warlock in the corner, and there's some urchins running around. Whatever. That's my. Anyway, that's how I picture them. Long story short, but that isn't obviously all the places. That isn't all the places. But what I would love to have had is I would have loved to understand how much terrain I need. So big shout out to Ishik, who from the WTC. Big love to him. Who did terrain maps for his army. Can you say Baldur's Gate? Yeah, I can say Baldur's Gate. That's a great game, dude. Baldur's Gate 2. I loved it. Anyway, where was I? Where was I? Yes, I would have loved it if that company, when I had loads of money, way back in the day, I would have loved it if they'd have been like, this is the terrain map to play Age of Sigmar or Warhammer Fantasy Battle on. This is the volume you need and the number of insert buildings here that I need. Click bundle, and then I would have been like, click. That's exactly what I would have wanted. I wish they would do that now in 40k, and you can see those again on the WTC site. They've set that up for their terrain, which I think is really valuable to us. If terrain is as important as we think in both game systems, 40k and Age of Sigmar, there should be like a standard template or several templates that you can just be like cool, and then you can fit, or you can buy models to fit to those templates. It's not going to limit your creativity at all, and you can always add more. You never have to be given permission to break the rules. But I love the idea of that, because then I can just set the terrain up. Because the best, normally when I play Age of Sigmar, I'm just like, how do you feel about that? I move stuff around and I'm like, how do you feel? And then my opponent's like, yeah, I feel good. We both feel good about that, whatever. Guess Rob shaved more than just his head. Did I shave my balls? Is that what we're saying? Yeah, a bit of Dragon Age as well. No Skyrim, only Oblivion. Oh, I seem to have got you all really stressed out. Can I just side note very quickly? See, there's Pete Pratt. See, Pete, always ahead of the game. I'm painting 2 tables of terrain to WTC format right now. See? So it gives you, like, as a hobbyist, someone should just do the fucking work. And Ishik for 40k has already done that. We're going to do the same for Age of Sigmar for the Super Series. So you guys will be able to be like, have a terrain volume and a terrain map, and there'll be different terrain volumes. Because one of the really interesting things about pairings, or looking at things like, so this is for all my Sylvaneth bros. So for the Super Series, our pack includes three terrain types: light, medium, and heavy. Light, medium, heavy. Light, medium, heavy. Why is this really important? Well, it's because it's a really valuable lesson I learned from the 40k community, specifically Tom and all the guys at the WTC. What they told me was that, because we tried to do a show once about pairing archetypes for pairing armies into each other at team events. And Tom cared more about pairing into the right sort of terrain than he ever cared about, and he's been to several ETCs, than he ever cared about pairing into the correct matchup, which I thought was fascinating. So we have 3 types of terrain. We have medium, which is standard tournament terrain, which is the standard, which no one really knows what the standard is, but it's going to be our standard. The kind of standard where it's like 8 to 10 pieces, standard, with maps. Great. Next up, you have light, which is almost the same volume of terrain, but it doesn't have the same height and width structures that the other. So again, 8 to 10 pieces, but they're smaller pieces. So it's a lighter terrain. And then heavy, which is the same number again, but larger pieces. And therefore, you end up with these really nice interactions. So that if you wanted to, let's say you wanted to bring a Sylvaneth army to a Super Series, you would always try to pair them into the light terrain, because you could potentially, in this situation, actually put out more terrain, because the standard is set for some insane sort of setup, which is cool. And I think that's really fun. Whereas if you are like playing Seraphon, it's a negative to be able to put down your Realm Shaper engine, because you might not be able to put it down because there's a dense volume of terrain. So can OCR Bone Reapers avoid heavy terrain maps during pairing so the Bone Tide Nexus won't get blocked? There you go. There's Owen said you might actually be able to put out one wood. Yeah, there's loads that we haven't really explored in the tactical elements. We talk about tournament packs all the time as well. So you talk about a tournament pack and it has 5 scenarios. Whatever. But sometimes those are tailored. They're like, well, we want a balance of good scenarios that do a certain job, especially with the new General's Handbook scenarios. New General's Handbook scenarios, if you think about it, you've got these are good for battle line, these are good for heroes, these are good for monsters. So if you're going to include one, you almost have to include the other two to get a fair balance, right? But maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, I'd like to reinforce battle line being here, so that's the only one I'm going to include. Then I'll include 4 other scenarios, whatever the case might be. That's where you're at. Or you think, I want one objective heavy one, and I want something like Knife to the Heart to split, which is a scenario that you win by scoring both objectives. It's kind of you have to achieve the objective to win, apart from the others, which is just hold objectives. So scenario packs are things that we've talked about on the show years ago. Like we even did some suggested ones, which is fun. I know like guys like Hugh at the Bad Moon listened to that show and ended up setting up some at one point. We had a chat about that when I was down there, which is really cool. There's so many things to explore in this community still, not for standardization, not so that it just becomes boring and is because then you can become unstandard. You could do something different. So standardized terrain means you can add more. So then you can play in dense boards, or you can add less, and you can play in light boards. And then you can kind of either set your tournament up that way, like, hey guys, we're going to have really light terrain. Or you think shooting's too big, and you're going to plan on having dense terrain boards. It'd be like 1 in 3 boards is dense terrain, so maybe don't bring only shooting. You know, that will negatively affect it. Now, I know the realms are meant to do the same thing. But the realms, I think, are too random and they're a bit weird. So I'm not into them. And also, you can practice at home. I've spoken a lot there. That was a bit of a tirade. I'm going to slow down now. I'm going to take a swig of water, so stay hydrated, everyone. And then I'm going to see what you guys are saying in the chat. Thematic terrain is much better for immersion in the game. I agree with that. I think, but when we're talking about like the density of terrain, it doesn't mean that it has to be unthematic. You can design quality thematic terrain, which I think is real. In knowing terrain rules, the line of sight blocking is always important in a tabletop game. Of course. Hey, Chuckabuddy, hope you're well. Did you decide on a heavy terrain in an attempt to get Flying Nighthawk picked? Says Age of Sedmar. It was because, it was expressed to me, the show that we did, which again was a 40k show, where a lot of this dev stuff happens a lot of the time. Nick and Tom are really solid for helping me like dev a lot of this stuff. The interesting thing about the terrain, I think, is that it changes the tactics up. The teams will know about it going into it, so they'll understand what they want to do. And so we get to understand how armies might play into different boards as well as into different armies. I think that there's a really interesting additional tactical element to that. I really like it. I really, really like it. I think it really changes the scope of the game for us as viewers. It changes the scope of the game for the players, and it changes the scope of the tactics before you even turn up to the event. And I think there's so much. I was thinking about this today, everyone. I would like your thoughts on this as well. Hello, Battle Chode, by the way. Hey, Desert Sketch. You babe. I hadn't thought about how standardizing terrain density helps out people who want to put down faction stuff. Yeah, you have to be careful when you say I want a knife to the heart, because some mad lads I'll be careful. Came out with no power due to the hurricane, and Rob shaved his head. Oh, Gorka Walker, hurricane. I hope you're okay. You, your family, and all your anyone around you. 40k relies, says Age of Sedmar, on line of sight shooting, and the way it was played in pre-ETC was not conducive to good tactics for sure. There you go. But yeah, I'm a big proponent of more streamlined, coherent terrain use for AOS competitiveness as well. Good. All right, we're all in a solid place there, I think. And if you don't agree, leave some comments below on YouTube. Definitely. Tom Jens, have I seen Dark Fantastic Mills terrain? I have. It's very good. It would be unsurprising if we didn't see some at the Super Series. It would be unsurprising. And number one, because it's fantastic. Darkly fantastic. But also, he's a legend. So, it would be unsurprising if we didn't see some there. Yeah. And again, anyway, excellent terrain. Big shout out to Anti-Plutocrasto as well, who does some excellent 3D printed terrain. I wish NashCon had happened this year. Terrain is just as important as other part of the game. You wouldn't accept random point stats on your units, but accept wildly different table setups, says Rambo Squirrel. Agreed. And I think it's time as a community we kind of grew up. But let's deliver that in a story. Let's deliver that in a setting, because I'm still really want you guys to like jump on board with me with this idea, because I feel that it's really, really important. I want to see people battle in a place, not on a table. And I want to, if I want to be lost in the armies, let's say I don't give a fuck who's playing. I don't care that this guy's playing against this guy. Let's just say, like, I don't care about the people. Those storylines don't grab me. Some people, it will just be, I care that guy's playing that guy. That's my storyline. But other people will be like, I care that army's playing that army, which is cool. Now you want the setting. And when we're at competitive events, we don't really design the setting. And that's what I want. I think a setting would be really valuable. Is Rob a narrative player now? Yes. Could we potentially all be all of the players at the same time? For example, 940k, if terrain is scarce, Royal Mail says, we are back to 8th edition Pew Pews. It was in 9th and 9th terrain amount. It's a totally different game. It is. It's really, really important. I'm totally behind the narrative of the battlefield. The idea of a place is great. Yeah. Xtab, but felt the terrain. Oh, what did Xtab say? Something before. But felt terrain is so practical. Felt terrain. Yes, we could use 2D felt terrain. That isn't the plan. And also, don't forget, if you'd like to sign up, this is a little quick infomercial. If you would like to sign up to the world's best TTS Age of Sigmar tournament run by Owen Jackson, you can still sign up. It's called Hammer Time 2, and it's got at least 28 players so far. The Honest Wargamer will be discussing both the lists and the results. So if you want shout-outs and you want to prove that you're the big dick energy player of Age of Sigmar on Tabletop Simulator, that's the event to sign up to. Officially endorsed by the Honest Wargamer. W. Soren, I have a tabletop world. I have a lot of tabletop to little. I've been speaking too long. Sometimes I speak too long. I get too excited, and I talk over myself. Something I'm going to try and improve. I have a lot of tabletop world terrain, says W. Soren. But where do you get your 3D printed terrain, says W. Soren. Okay, so 3D printed terrain. There is a website called Thingiverse. Oh no, I was on it the other day. Thingiverse potentially. So STL files. Okay, so I'll quickly talk about this. If you want 3D printed terrain, you can buy a 3D printer, or you could get someone to print it for you. Those are two very real options. What you do is you print it via something called an STL file, and you can buy those off different websites, or people have started to do Patreons. So you can join a Patreon, and if you pay a certain fee, you have access to those STL files to be able to print stuff. And that is normally where people get stuff printed. To give some clarity, it will take you, to do something like terrain, it will take you quite a while, maybe a couple of weeks to do a piece of terrain per time, as I understand it. But you could probably, over a couple of months, get a board's worth of terrain at home yourself for the cost of what that terrain probably would cost you to buy. But in the future, you won't have to outlay for the printer, but you do have to learn how to be a 3D printer, which is you have to learn how to clean stuff. So imagine it's a bit like airbrushing. it's a bit like airbrushing, where it's one of those things where it's a bit daunting, and I have to actually learn how to clean stuff and have skills. So if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that, right? Yeah, Thingiverse is the one. Thingiverse and Shapeways are the two websites. Thingiverse and Shapeways. Um, there are loads and loads of different sites. So those are places to get stuff printed out. I think I was on a thought train and I've lost it now. Since you will have players naming their heroes, I look forward to when a particular location on a battlefield would be named after one particular hero for doing something spectacular in one game. Yes! And we're back on track. Thank you, Draconda. The thing that's exciting for me is when because the Super Series happens over the course of weeks, the exciting thing about there being a setting is when something happens in that setting, as a community, like you guys, us, we will be able to add to that story. There are so many stories that can occur in wargaming, and we just don't hit enough of those keynotes. And that's what we're trying to achieve with the Super Series, and that's what we're trying to achieve with live streaming. Because I think involving the audience and involving the storylines and the players requires a third party. Effectively, you as the viewers and us as the commentators are the DMs for a competitive narrative event. And it's a competitive event because people are trying to win, but it's also a narrative event because the game is a story. Like, they are war games made of armies, like, with stories. And so so we effectively, as the community and as the commentators, we and the production team, we're going to be the DMs of that ongoing story, which I'm very, very, very excited about. Like, we're not going to change the story, but we're going to craft the story from the events that are occurring. And I think that's going to be, I'm super hype. Anyway, that's one part. Another thing I'd like to talk to you about is battle plans. That's what I want to talk about. I'm old enough to have used an early model 3D printer at uni, says Scotty. Imagine something the size of a big office printer full of plaster of Paris. Wow, they've come a long way. They're amazing. They're amazing. I think 3 to 5 years, this conversation, when we come back to this conversation about 3D printing, it's going to blow our minds. Blow our minds. Tournament struggle to get enough terrain. You become a hero when you rock up with a couple of boards worth. Yes, you do. Yes, meatballs. You absolutely do. Desert Sketch, what I was always thinking, I'm a player and I play in clubs or tournaments. Why would I make my own terrain? Okay. Well, I mean, if you aren't playing at home and you're playing at a club, then you don't need to. If you're playing at tournaments and they provide terrain, why would you? America, they definitely provide. Okay. I have been to some prestigious 40k Age of Sigmar events in America. I won't throw names around, but I would say the terrain is fairly impressive for the size and amount of people playing. But is the terrain functional enough for it to be even a part of the game? No. Whereas if I look at events where terrain was provided, let's say Bloodshed in the Shire, and let's say NashCon is the perfect example. And if you want a really good example of a 40k version, that would be Capital City Bloodbath. Quality terrain provided by clubs so that you had better tournament experience. So if maybe you could design and do your own terrain board so that you could play it at a tournament, just bring it along and say, I've done a board's worth of terrain for you all to play with. And everyone will be like, this is freaking sweet, dude. Thank you. So why would you do it? Pats on the back, handshakes, maybe a cheeky blowjob. I'm not really sure how it works. Anyway. And then you have horrific terrain like the LGT, but is very functional. Sorry, I'm talking 40k LGT. I'm not sure about the AOS LGT terrain. I think it was really good. If someone could if someone remembers. All models and terrain needs to magnetize so you can end your movement anywhere and balance 100-pound models precariously, says AOS Tim. Handcrafted terrain is also special, and its soul not be discarded too easily. Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to quickly talk about battle plans and I'm going to head out for the day, but this has been really fun. So thank you. So there's a lot of projects ongoing. Obviously also building a venue. Walls are going in. Boards. Technology. There's a lot happening. A lot of moving parts on this project. And as you know, from one of the most disorganized people in Wargaming, a la me. Hello everyone. I'm an idiot. Uh, mm, but we're trying. We're trying. Anyway, I wanted to quickly talk about battle plans because I was thinking about this earlier. Probably a really silly thought, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So I was thinking, I watched, I don't know if you guys watch, there's a YouTube channel called Historia Civilis. It's a super cool dude who makes videos about battles, normally to do like Greek. Space Marine 123, thank you for following. You are 100% a Games Workshop account. So thanks for tuning in, intern for GW. Link him, Historia Civilis. I can't, because if I open up web browsers, it closes down the stream. So I can't do that. Hey Gabawaki, thanks for being here. Thanks to Roshi for following as well. But big love to Space Marine 123, which was the password, by the way, for a lot of the Games Workshop stuff. They were like, "Here's your new computer." I was like, "Thanks." I was like, "What's the login?" They're like, "Space Marine 123." I was like, "Okay." Yeah, thanks Tom for linking in the chat. Anyway, Historia Civilis does these really cool kind of battle reports, but effectively he tells the story of some major battles that happen in history, and then he uses little blocks and circles and he moves them around. Super fun. It's not particularly high tech, but it doesn't need to be. It tells me the story and I understand what's going on. It's excellent. Really, really like it. Anyway, the thing that I was thinking about last night was about battle plans being announced ahead of time. So some people have said that they want battle plans, and I guess this is the kind of question I'm going to leave you all with, and I'd love you to leave some comments below or get back to me. Some people want battle plans announced ahead of time, or missions announced ahead of time. You'll be playing these 5 missions or these 5 battle plans. And I'm in that camp. And some people don't. They want it to be a surprise, along with the realm being a surprise, because they think it adds to the generalmanship. Okay, so I'm not sure which side you guys pick on this situation. So the Dutch GT is now rolling for battle plans on the day itself. Okay. I really like the idea of sponsored training pieces. Oh, okay. I'll come back to that, Ziggy, in a bit. Sorry. Anyway. Now, watching where Historia Civilis relates to this is, if you watch any of those, you'll notice that at no point did the generals ever just randomly fucking turn up and battle. They weren't like, "Oh, see there, those guys," and they were like, "Yeah, let's battle right here on this land we know nothing about." Like warfare, especially like, oh, my voice went then. That's a bit weird. Warfare normally and almost traditionally was done by scouting out lands, picking a battlefield, and then battling there, or cutting off, let's say, a supply route or access to, they've got to get across the river, so we're just going to pitch up and stand here so they can't get across, or we're going to cut off the access via this path or road, whatever it might be, and that's where the battle would happen. Some people would have an advantageous area to battle from, and some would have a disadvantageous area to battle from. Or in the case of, let's say, something like Agincourt, they would take their small numbers and they would use the terrain to their advantage. But my point is I think that knowing the battle plans ahead of time makes more sense to me narratively. I wouldn't just pitch up and be like, "Oh, I need some heroes to score this mission. I lose. I didn't prep ahead of time." So that's where my justification comes from. I was thinking about skirmish lines as well. We were talking about conga lining the other day. Skirmish lines, obviously a traditional way of like doing some scouting, different to scouting, but effectively like picket lines and skirmish lines. Now, I'm not a war historian at all. I've watched some YouTube videos, I've read some books. That's about the maximum I know, and nowhere near enough that other people couldn't. It would be super cool to interview someone about this, I think, like an actual like war historian. I wonder who I could, like, if anyone knows anyone I could potentially ask. I'd be fascinated. Anyway, maybe I could even ask the Historia Civilis guy. That'd be fun. My point is that's my justification for why you should know the battle plans ahead of time. It would make sense that armies prep. Now, they might not have the resources to apply, like, if they're on a long campaign, they don't have the heroes, let's say, to score hero-based missions or whatever it might be. But, so they might not have the resources, but they would at least know what the battlefield was like ahead of time. which I guess is probably what we achieve that by rolling to determine sides and then picking a side. Anyway, that was just a random thought I had yesterday that I thought I'd share with you guys. Anyway, let's see what everyone's saying. They all fall anywhere. They all fall out of the TARDIS anywhere in space and time. You have to take more risks and have a better plan if you know. A better plan if you don't know what the battle plans you will get. I don't think I agree with that at all. I like them being unknown prior to list building submitted, but being released during in the week leading up to the event. Okay, battle plans announced before the event, but after list submission. Okay, seems to be a concurrent theme. I'm not against that, FYI. Wild variants of the field of battle is for giving your new player friend a good chance for a win, or when you're already 4 beers deep. Variants should be reduced in competitive, should know ahead of time. Okay, I personally prefer incentivizing balanced lists, says HSMR, to see what value in hiding battle plans until the day. E.g., do you take enough heroes battle lines in case the leader battle line scenarios show up? Fair enough. They'd sit at a table and plan it out, an engagement meeting, if you will. If they would meet up and battle like a meeting kind of engagement. All rounds except the last should be known beforehand, in my opinion. That's very interesting. In a 3-round event, you can have 2 predetermined and the last one random out of 3 that are also announced as a pool, so you please both sides. Okay, always listen before battle plans are revealed, and then release them all so players have time to strategize. 1 to 2 days. Lindy Beach. Thanks, Adia. One more serious note, knowing it ahead of time helps with the book imbalances. Certain armies just naturally cover all the bases, whereas others would need to build specifically for that and be weaker in general. Okay, maybe declare most ahead of time, but have one random surprise battle plan. And then, hey, sorry again. Why am I not taking a Stormcast or Nighthorn? I know I'm going to play Total Commitment battle plan, so I can have an effect on my army choice. Yes, but if you didn't know ahead of time. Anyway, that was my justification. And I was thinking it through last night, and I was like, how do I feel? And also, like, how much does I know there's someone listening who's going to be like, oh, real world generalship doesn't really matter when it comes to a war game. But surely playing a war game, we want to feel like generals. Like when you play Total War, it's just a computer game. It's just a computer game, right? But like they give you all of the resources, like you build your city so that you've got more gold, so you can hire a better, more elite unit, and then that's in your army stat. Then when you're on the battlefield, you're moving them around. You're meant to feel like a general. That's the idea. Like that's what we're being, right? We're playing as generals, and so you want to feel like that when you're playing with your army. So I just wondered how relatable they are and how much we jump away from that sometimes. Okay. That's me done for the day. I have to lift wood with Mr. Nathan Prescott and build what's called a stud wall, if anyone knows. I imagine it's a wall made out of pictures of Nathan. That sounds like a stud wall to me. It's a mix of battle plans, you're right. Sometimes battle plans are formulated in advance. Sometimes you need to simulate the fog of war. Okay. Watch your hat when building that wall, Rob. I will, but I've lost my hat. I think it was in the wall, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do in that situation. Grab a wood with Nathan at the stud wall. Oh, baby. Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Join me again tomorrow for Stream Street Day 144. Very, very, very excited about talking to you guys again. I will have a guest on tomorrow, so it won't just be the mad ramblings of me. Big shout out to my stats team, the terrain team, the venue team, the teams team. There's a lot of things happening. So I'm glad to be able to just chat to you guys and have these updates. If anyone's got any ideas or things that they'd like to see on some stream streaks, or if they know a real world army historian who might be interested in this conference, that would be a fascinating show. I don't know who I would talk to. I'm going to try and find that out. But that'd be fun. But yeah, you guys have been great. Thank you for listening. Thank you to everyone on the podcast. Please stay hydrated. Thank you to everyone on Patreon. Couldn't do it without you. You guys are wonderful. You're going to have to expect over the next month or so, things are going to be a little bit all over the shop. I want to stick to this commitment of the stream streak, even during these times, because I think it's really fun. And I know there's all sorts of people still in lockdown. And if you, by the way, final bit, if you are in lockdown and you're having a tough time, you should always reach out. Always reach out to someone. The community is the best bit ever. ever, 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 ever. So you just reach out. There'll be people there to support you and look after you and make sure you're okay. Okay. Oh, wait. Lindy Beige. Okay. Lindy Beige. I'm just going to write that down. Thank you, Anea. Lindy Beige. Okay. Sweet. Thanks. All right. Yeah. Reach out to someone. Love you tons. Fuck you, buddies. Have a great day.